You recognize that the governor has said that we're beginning to move upward in terms of numbers and a certain kind of safety, and that will be nice because even today this place looks so empty, and surely we could bring at least a dozen of those poor people in the hall, hello over there, maybe to be with us, but we'll correct that problem as soon as we can. So it is our third Sunday in Lent, and as Catholics are so familiar with that whenever we come to Lent, and particularly when we are celebrating people coming into the church, we turn to these great John Gospel stories. So here we are on the third week of Lent with the famous woman at the well. Next week, hold on to your seats, it's Bartimaeus, the blind man. And then, of course, on the fifth week, it's the blowout story, as only John could tell it, Lazarus come forth. The church over the centuries came to believe that these Gospels were particularly important for bringing those who were on the journey of enlightenment to greater insight into the fundamental mysteries. The church also believes that on this journey for you and I who are like old-timers, it's good to be renewed in our faith, and so our journeys are intimately linked. I wanted to say a couple of things about this famous gospel today because I think it is so poignant. On the one hand, I wanted to address what is, I think, very obvious to all of us, and certainly over the years, the spiritual theme, which is why I think it is selected, this idea of life-giving water. That spiritual theme probably captured best in the phrase in which he said, if you had recognized God's gift and the one who was speaking to you, you would have asked him for a drink of life-giving water and he would have given it. Well, when you listen to that little statement on the lips of Jesus, you recognize that all of us here have come to recognize what we believe to be God's gift. I mean, I suspect if you're here and in the pew and belonging as candidates, catechumens, or as the rest of the assembly, we've already made that kind of acclamation in our mind and heart. Jesus is the Father's plan for the salvation of the world. And you say, well, then what does this mean about life-giving water? Of course, we get all the images of the well and water and baptism and cleansing. All of that is pretty clear to us. But we would say that for every Christian, I want what it is that God has to give me in Christ, which is a deeper meaning and purpose for my life. Because the bottom line is, every human being, even if they are less aware of it, hungers and thirsts for deeper meaning. And that's what we recognize in the gift of Jesus. And the interesting thing is, just as you and I kind of know it up here, like Sister Mary Vincentia explained that very well to me in the 5th grade. I mean, I went to Catholic school, I got that. But here I am at 67, 40 years in the ministry, realizing that I continue to ponder and to seek, what is this life-giving water? What is this message that he gives, this ability to have wisdom, confidence, faith, conviction, and a desire for how to live my life out in the world? That, I think, all comes under the category of life-giving water. Does it make sense? Yes, Father? Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Because I think that's exactly it. And the good news in the story is this. The woman herself does exactly what we've done. She too comes to that faith. And she says to him, I know that there's a Messiah, and can I have this life-giving water in the particular way? So clearly, our purpose on the third Sunday and with catechumens, clearly our purpose is to prepare them and to deepen them in this Lenten journey, as we all want to be, as the scrutiny will allow us to do. On another level, I just didn't want this day to pass without addressing what I think is a fascinating piece about this amazing gospel. They're all amazing. But we may well be hearing today one of the most famous stories in the New Testament, because we know that the hand of the writer is hugely sophisticated. And this story of the woman at the well that we all could basically tell ourselves because we've heard it, we realize that when John's gospel relates a story to us, it is more likely symbolic than simply plain old real. Many people would put it this way. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the synoptic gospels, they typically could say, they tell us this is what happened. But when we listen to John, we've come with trained ears to say, John's not interested in merely what happened, as though the factual details. John's telling us what really happened, because there's an insight in the Johannine community that is very deep and very powerful, and that's why these stories invite us into a dialogue with them, and it's very interesting. So when we look at this woman at the well, I mean, what is it we begin to see that's so fascinating? Well, first of all, Jesus goes to Samaria. There is no place in the New Testament writings, you can take it to the bank, there's no acclamation in the New Testament writings that there was ever a mission to Samaria. When you hear the word Samaria, what comes to your mind? Hello? The outcast. We'd even say the Good Samaritan, but even that phrase was a shock to them that he would have said such a thing. So we realize that we're dealing with that split in Israel, and by now, as Catholics, we're all pretty well trained, right? 2 tribes in the south, 10 tribes in the north, they get severed, they get split. Centuries go by, and as often it happens, the ones in the north lose the original covenant fidelity, at least as the south sees it. And we can see that that split was painful. By the time Jesus comes on the scene, like they said, a Jew, well, they're all Jews, but the Jews of the south would have nothing to do with the Samaritan. The word meant dirt, impure, unclean, and all of that. So we've seen that played out. So now, look at the scene. He goes to Samaria, as John tells the story, and he sits down by a well. And what does she say to him? How can you, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan and a woman, for a drink? And there comes the great line, doesn't it? So what's going on here? A mission in Samaria that is wonderful and is unfolding. And then he says to her, if only you recognize God's gift, you would have asked, and I would have given you life-giving water. What does she say to him? It's the most beautiful, intelligent conversation back and forth. She says to him, do you think you're greater than Jacob, our ancestor, who gave us this cistern and this well, who brought his flocks here? And we see the big change, don't we? Because in the tribes of the north, they continued in their life to believe and to follow the patriarchs. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, huh? But in Jerusalem, in the south, they continued to build what? The dynasty of David. Do you see that big contrast that's there between Jerusalem, the center of worship? If you don't worship here, your worship's impure, to the north, who don't have Jerusalem there, and so they do what they do. Why else would Jesus say that great line? Daughter, the day is coming when people will worship not on this mountain or that mountain, but rather they will worship in spirit and in truth, coming to recognize who he was and what he was about to do. Is it plausible that the Gospel of John was indicating to us that there actually was a mission launched to Samaria, and that the Samaritans found a way with the Johannine disciples to come to a belief in Jesus as Messiah, and a union was captured in that particular way? It's a wonderful way to see that in all of its thing. The woman ends up saying to him, give me this water to drink. And then it gets even better. She leaves the bucket at the well. What image does that bring to your mind? I mean, it could. Just like the apostles left their fishing nets and went to follow him. She leaves the bucket at the well and goes to the town to tell the people, and she is none other than the first evangelist. The town comes to faith because of the witness of the woman. So the strange little piece of her just being viewed over the centuries as a woman of repute, we'll deal with that another time. Because even in John, that may have a different way for us to look at it. But the real point is, she brings them to faith, they come and see him, and in classic John's gospel, they say, "Come, stay with us, will you?" Which in that language we've come to know means, abide with me. Come and stay with us, be with me. On the third Sunday of Lent, this is the journey that all of us really seek. We recognize that the one we believe in, the gift we recognize as God's plan for salvation, is a Jesus who's inclusive of all people. And everyone is invited to the table and wants to create that kind of a reality for us. I think that's worth looking at and worth believing. The Lord be with you.